more of a generalist. I want to be more like the average Joe.
Welcome to the Rebel Health Coach Podcast with Tom Underwood. Armed with truth and knowledge, your journey to a healthy lifestyle can be obtained. Preventative wellness, quality nourishment, and daily fitness routines dramatically improve your outlook on life as a whole. And you'll find the support and info you need to accomplish a healthier lifestyle here. Together, we can empower each other along our journey to an amazing you.
Welcome to episode number 10 of the Rebel Health Coach Podcast. Today I'm joined by the host of Ancestral Health Radio podcast, James Kevin Broderick. We will be talking ancestral health and rewilding yourself. Enjoy the show. Hey, James. Welcome to the Rebel Health Coach Podcast this morning.
How's it going, man? Thanks for having me.
Thanks for taking the time. The reason I approached you is, first of all, besides your name, the Hairless Ape. So,
kind of self-branded. I don't know if that's going to stick or not, but that's kind of. I'm James the Hairless Ape Broderick. Yep.
Where did the Hairless Ape come from?
Well, it's actually kind of funny. Before doing what I'm doing now, it's been several different renditions, and it started from trying to do a blog, and then the blog failed, and then I tried another blog, and that blog failed, until finally I did this podcast called Ancestral Health Radio, and the Hairless Ape kind of was a previous website that I had. It's called thehairlessape.com, but it was just kind of an obscure name. I think if you weren't into kind of my small niche of ancestral health, paleo, rewilding kind of sphere, you may not get the reference. So again, I don't know if it's going to stick, but that's just kind of what I have as a nickname for myself.
It works, especially with the ancestral health end of this and going into paleo and, like you said, rewilding. You have a great podcast.
Thank you.
And you're growing like leaps and bounds, which is cool. And you're also in a tight niche. You got some heavy hitters in your niche. Of course, how do you feel about that?
Well, you know what? I take it as like I'm kind of the student here. I feel like because there are big names out there, I'm not trying to position myself as a big name. I'm not trying to be a guru. I'm not trying to be an expert. I'm trying to be more of a generalist. I want to be more like the average Joe. I'm kind of here. You and I are taking this journey together. We're learning this whole thing together, And so I just want people to understand that, I'm sitting atop shoulders of giants. And for those of us who I know don't have the time or the interest to go make these connections for themselves, I make that connection for them. So that's kind of where Ancestral Health Radio falls into place. Is I find these people, they share their story and their expertise with us, and we can take action on that to grow in that direction.
That is awesome, dude. So your show is the Ancestral Health Radio.
Yes.
And I'll put the link for that in the show notes for the listeners. Let's go into a bar stool version, if you will. Me and you sitting down for a cold one, and I ask you what you do. What is ancestral health?
Ancestral health is basically just looking at your health, the different elements or perspectives of your health, through the lens of a 21st century hunter-gatherer gardener. I mean, that's it in a nutshell. And then we could go down that path where, what is that? And I would just tell the person it's just how we view our health through the lens of evolution. How do we as a species fit into the web of life? Because I'm sure that if you were to take a chimpanzee from the wild and put it into a room and feed it cigarettes, give it cigarettes, pizza, and beer, it wouldn't be too happy. You know what I'm saying? So,
okay, that's a awesome version. I like that. I like what you said earlier about some of the heavy hitters in this realm, and I'm right there with you. This is something that is new to me, and I just dig it. So, and going with that, what is a little bit about your background before this whole rewilding concept? a little bit of backstory on you.
Yeah. Short version of that is I was raised by my grandmother in Southern California. I kind of went back and forth actually between my mother and my grandmother when I was younger. And basically my mother's side had a lot of health and drug related issues. And 4 out of 6 out of my aunts and uncles passed away from drug and health related illnesses. And my father, a couple of years ago, passed away from Parkinson's. So for me, I've really taken it upon myself to make sure that I manage some of the things that could possibly go wrong for me in the future. Because when I was younger, I saw myself going down that same path. You know, I was kind of ruining myself with the whole stereotypical drug, sex, rock and roll thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I saw that was happening to me. I actually got in trouble with the law. You know.
Okay.
And I got busted selling marijuana is essentially what happened. I'm totally open about it, and that just changed the direction of my life. I was actually addicted to opiates and heroin, and it was just a really, really bad and really dark situation for me. And if it hadn't been for the police, you know, raiding my apartment and me basically losing everything, I probably wouldn't be here talking with you today. So from that point forward, I got myself a real job, and it was at this really cool little hippie health food store in Southern California called Mother's Market. And they really gave me an opportunity to learn and grow myself and my knowledge about natural health.
Okay. And
when I was there, I learned about something called the caveman diet. It was called the caveman diet before it was called the paleo diet.
Exactly.
From that moment on, it just kind of made sense, viewing things through this evolutionary lens. And I'd never really even thought about it. And as soon as I had started to apply some of these dietary practices, which I'm sure we could talk about later, they started to affect me in profound ways, which obviously led to me thinking, how, if I applied other ancestral health practices or paleo practices in other areas of my life, how is this going to affect those areas? If it has such a profound effect on my health as far as diet and mood and energy, how is it going to affect me if I start applying these other quote unquote hacks, that people are calling these days?
Okay.
From there, I just helped a lot of people with their health around supplements, though, at that time, and whole foods. So that's kind of my background. And then, from there, I've done lots of odds and ends jobs, but finally, I've gotten back into what I love doing, which is doing the podcast, which is Ancestral Health Radio.
That's awesome. I've been down the same rabbit hole, but that's another story. And that's another thing that attracted to me is your honesty with all this. In your first episode I was like, wow, you just came out and let it go and bared your soul to whoever would listen, basically.
Yeah.
For all you out there, go back and listen to that first episode. All his episodes are amazing, but going down that area, what is rewilding? I mean, I understand the paleo or caveman diet, and I follow that to an extent. I make modified versions of that.
Yeah, which I think everybody should.
And I add, but our society today is, I posted something on Facebook the other day about log cabin syrup, and people buy that stuff, it's full of garbage. It's basically a chemical shit bomb.
Right.
And when you look at the caveman diet, where I'm going with this is the whole rewilding, because we really lost that in society.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but there's, you talk about the way you felt going from the rabbit hole to this whole rewilding self. A lot of that has to do with the health of the things you're eating versus the way you were eating back then.
So how I think of it is so there's the paleo aspect where, I think a lot of people are attracted to that just because, obviously they want to lose weight. And sometimes for me, it was more of the philosophy, and the idea of it just kind of made sense for me when I heard it. But, when I ask other people, they're just like, oh yeah, I just wanted to lose weight. That's, and I heard that was the best diet to go try, and I was like, okay. Well, for me, I was more curious than that, and I wanted to follow it down the rabbit hole. So again, I wanted to see how to view other aspects of this like paleo type lifestyle to my other aspects of my life. And that's when I heard this term rewilding. And I was already doing this thing, quote unquote, rewilding without even knowing it then. And rewilding is basically the idea that we as a species have been domesticated. And the process of rewilding is the process of un-domestication. So we're trying to undomesticate ourselves from a civilized culture that is, impressed upon us, misconceptions, different types of technologies that outsource a lot of our strength as a species. And really, it's just going back to a time. It's actually not even going back to a time. I shouldn't say that because you can't talk about it linearly, right? We basically want to be able to create what I call a transition culture. So think of it like this. So there's like people going in, looking at their health, and they end up in paleo, right? So they're like, okay, cool. I'm shopping at the grocery store. Next thing you know, they take it a step further and they're shopping at their local farmer's market, and they're meeting the farmers there. They go to the ranch, they meet the cows, they pick up the chickens that they see on the farm. And next thing you know, they're getting into hunting and fishing, and they're getting more deeper and deeper into this. And eventually, if they start applying these hunter-gatherer type practices, they'll realize that what they're doing is essentially rewilding, which is can be taken to so many different avenues. You can apply this rewilding concept to so many avenues, but it's essentially being a human in the most sustainable way possible on this planet while following your ancestral roots, where you came from, the traditions and ceremonies of your past.
Okay. In today's society, how do you do that? I mean, I myself barely find time to go for a walk daily. So in that aspect of trying to maintain a lifestyle, or, not even a lifestyle, but pay the bills, and doing this, going out and hunting, gathering, and walking in the woods, how do you yourself fit that in?
So for me, I view this as like a mentor of mine, Frank Forensich of Exuberant Animal. He has this concept called the long body. And it's kind of, if you think about it, the long body, as he describes it, is how we look at not only our fitness and our nutrition, but our community and tribe. So it's like our whole environment and our tribe. So it's the long approach to things. So when it comes to rewilding, I can do it as fast or as slow as I want, because I understand that this isn't something that's going to change or happen over a single lifetime. It's generational. So it's a lifetime practice for me.
Okay.
Understanding that this type of thing is just a lifetime, it's going to be a learning process until the day I die. And when I can no longer learn anymore, that's going to be the day that I go, And how I approach this, that's exactly how I approach this. And I just take it one step at a time. So I got really good with my health and nutrition, so I'm kind of that guy right now. I know quite a bit about health and nutrition. So I'm okay. Well, then I'm going to start this time getting closer to my food ecology. So that's going to be getting more into hunting and fishing this year, and for my movement practice, I'm going to start incorporating more functional movements and working in these type of movement, nutritious things that mimic hunter-gatherer movements, which is really just being outside. If you go outside and you hike and you move around in nature, you're going to be getting a lot of these natural movements.
Right.
Things like squatting, hanging, walking, very basic things, And really, I want to focus on my mobility in that case. But it's these things I prioritize. I make sure that I prioritize them. My health is my number one priority, so I make time for it. Because not only do I have a regular job, a 9-to-5 job, but I also have my podcast, and I got to do all the regular responsibilities of an adult. So it's just kind of where you can fit things in, and understanding that it it's a process. It takes time, but it's patience and understanding again that it's just something that if you just are consistent with something, it will eventually happen.
And let's talk about the diet part about it a little bit. What does your typical day look like? What you eat, what you consume? Are you ketogenic? Are you more paleo? Or are you a little bit of both with some Mediterranean thrown in?
Yeah, I mean, I would have to say that last one right there. But it's really, so I'm trying to get to an ideal, like I could talk about how I would like to eat, and I can talk about exactly how I eat right now. So right now it is, I usually do something called intermittent fasting where I eat within an eating window. And I'm sure your audience is probably familiar with that if you guys had Jimmy Moore on.
Exactly.
Basically, I'm practicing intermittent fasting. I don't eat, basically breakfast. I stop eating at 8. I don't eat until 12 or 1 or 2. And I usually break my fast. It's real simple. Like I've got it down to like and this is how I structure most things too. When I look at meals and I try to put meals together, I think of like an egg. An egg is perfect macronutrients for supporting life. Right. So I think of an egg as mostly fat, high in fat, moderate amount of protein, and it's fairly low amount in carbohydrates. So that's kind of how I think about when I'm putting meals together. But I'm even more structured than that. So I have my fatty coffee in the morning to sustain me so that I get enough calories in through my day through healthy sources of fat from butter and MCT and things like that, medium chain triglycerides from coconut products. On top of that, once I break my fast, it's typically with some type of fermented foods, kimchi, sauerkraut, pickles. It could be any number of fermented products. It could be beet kvass, anything like that. And then I typically follow that up with some type of homemade bone broth that I make. And that could be from any pastured animal. It doesn't really matter. And then I have 2 meals usually, 2 main meals throughout the day. And then I have a snack, which is typically a handful of macadamia nuts.
Okay.
And those 2 meals are typically I make a giant colorful salad. And then my other meal is going to be usually 2 cups of both cruciferous vegetables or, things like broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, things like that.
Right.
And then 2 cups of dark leafy greens. I make sure that's very, most people, when they look at what I eat, they think I'm a vegan or vegetarian because I'm the idea that, it really is meat on the side kind of idea. Our hunter-gatherer kinfolk didn't always have access to protein, so that's always a really important thing to remind yourself. But that's kind of what a typical day looks like. That I kind of structure it in that way, and then I try and lean towards as kind of like a pescatarian style. I try to eat as much seafood as humanly possible because of that healthy DHA that you get from those type of animals. Yeah,
that's awesome. What's your favorite fermented food?
Oh man, I mean it's really hard. It's hard. I mean I go back and forth between just different types of sauerkrauts and kimchi, but it varies. I mean, I like playing around with it. There's so many different varieties of fermented things that you can try, and that I have yet to try too. So,
are you making your own?
Yeah, we make our own. Like
awesome.
Red beet cabbage sauerkraut is one of my favorites. I would actually try that. I would actually have, and if your guests aren't familiar with that, it's lacto fermentation is just the pre-digestion of vegetables, probiotic-rich vegetables from bacteria. So very, very healthy for your gut.
Oh, yeah. And it's also why you feel so good.
Yeah. Basically, there's been new science saying that 80%, upwards to 90% of the serotonin created in your body is found in your enteric nervous system, your gut, your second
it's a
brain.
huge mind-stomach connection.
Yeah, I mean, look at it. Just even when you look at it, it looks like a brain. Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
It's your second brain. You have one brain, and that brain is probably more important, or as much important as the brain in your head.
And that's exactly how why I put such an importance on the gut. But things are changing for me too. So I'm always learning new things from my guests. And so I'm always evolving things that are happening. So for me, it's going to be I'm also going to be more seasonal about my foods too. So eating in season is very important. One of my a guest that's going to be coming up on my podcast, Dr. John Douillard, he has a book called The 3 Seasons Diet.
Exactly.
And that's something that I'm going to be experimenting with too, because he uses a lot of Ayurvedic or ancient traditional Indian or Ayurvedic medicinal practices. And so I'm going to start playing around with some of those ideas. It's really just a huge experimentation, finding out what works best for you, because what works good for me may not work for everybody. But
the bio-individuality concept, and everybody's different. I can't eat bananas because I'll gain weight quick when I have that much sugar. So if I eliminate bananas, I'm cool. But you could eat 3 or 4 bananas a day and not gain a pound.
Yeah. See, you know what though? For me, it's never even been about the weight at this. For me, it's always been about like performance and knowing that, later down the line, it's really protecting myself and, any future children I may have.
Exactly.
So, because, with my father's neurodegenerative disease, I want to make sure that I'm taking care of those certain areas.
Right, exactly. And a question I get often asked, is how do I lose weight? I'm like, or what do I eat? I'm like, if you eat like we were born to eat, or biblically speaking, there's some diets on biblically based, but if we ate what our grandparents, or even go back our grandparents, or my grandparents, or my great-grandparents, if we ate like them, we wouldn't be in this situation.
Yeah. Things are totally different, even though, from them to now, though. That's the thing. We've been conditioned. We've created food these days that I want people to understand that we've created food these days that are, they're just addictive as drugs. It's maybe even more so, so sugar is 10 times more addictive than cocaine, they say. Think about it's sugar, salt, and fat. They have hooked us, so it's really understanding that who do you want to give your power to, and if the simple answer is cook at home. Cook at home. It really comes down to that, and try experimenting. Again, kind of follow your own personal philosophy and try things out.
I just listened to your episode. I think it was today, actually. I'm a big fan of mushroom coffee.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
When I tell people I drink mushroom coffee, they look at me like I have a third eye. Yeah, totally. Yeah. So I just interviewed a gentleman. His name is Tero Isokaupala. He is the founder of Four Sigmatic, and they sell coffee elixirs and hot cocoa products infused with medicinal mushrooms. Right.
And so it's funny because, as he said, drinking mushrooms, if anything, is one of the most ancestral things, one of the most ancestral ways you can consume these type of things. And it was just a good episode because he breaks down exactly some of the things you might need to know when you go out mushroom foraging, some of the cool Finnish practices, ancestral Finnish practices that he and his family used to do, and that there's everyman rights, and how Finland's laws are so much different than here in the States as far as what you can and can't do in the forests. But just a really good episode on the different types of, like, what type of mushrooms are, what is a fruiting body, what is mycelia, and basically I can go into those real quick. Fruiting body of a mushroom is essentially, it's like an apple off of a tree. It's all the accumulated energy from the mycelium, or this web-like network that is underground, under grass, soil, things that just basically anywhere you can step on natural land is covered with this stuff. It's a web-like material, kind of like the fascia of your body. It's kind of like the body bag of the earth. It's weird. It's interesting, but really, really, really cool. And one time a year during its perfect season, it pushes all of its nutrients into a single point where it fruits and creates a fruiting body or a mushroom. And so that's kind of the life cycle. And I'll go through the life cycle real quick too of a mushroom. I might as well. So there's a spore, and this is exactly what Taro says. There's a spore, and it's basically a seed, and it pollinates the ground into something called a hyphae. The hyphae turns into the mycelium, which is that web-like structure, and then it has a symbiotic relationship typically with trees or dead or decaying material, which again are going to be trees for the most part. They will use that symbiotic relationship to gather nutrients and then provides polysaccharides or sugars to the trees, which is really kind of cool. And they've even done studies now that that's kind of how trees can communicate to other trees too, is by using this mycelium type network underneath the ground. Really, really cool stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically I follow something called conscious omnivory. And it's the idea that we eat from these 4 kingdoms of life, and that's plant, animal, bacterial, and fungal. So obviously we know where plants come from. We know where animals come from. The bacterial part would be bacteria from fermented foods, and then fungal would be from the medicinal power of mushrooms, and that's kind of how I get a lot of my mushrooms in daily are from that coffee, which is from 4 Sigmatic. It's just a really cool way of kind of supplementing my diet. But obviously I like to get as many things as I can from food. So the other day I went foraging, and we have like a whole basket of chanterelle mushrooms right here. Chanterelle mushrooms.
We might have to make this live to see for people to see the video of this. That's awesome.
Yeah. So
yeah.
Yeah, I got to clean these off, but yeah. So I do foraging, and I'm learning all this stuff as I go. I'm not an expert, but let me tell you how empowering it is when you know how to find and hunt for your own food. And to think that if you were to go to any 5-star restaurant or 3-star Michelin star restaurant, you know what I'm saying? Like go to Noma in where's that? I forget where Noma is. I think it's in Denmark.
Okay.
But it's like one of the top restaurants in the world, right? And the reason why they're the top restaurants in the world is because, number one, they have their own fermentation, like science, like lab where they test these different types of fermentations and things like that. And then on top of this, they're big because they forage all their own food from their local bioregion, their local area. So that's why it's so important. All their food is wild. So wild food is just the most, the top of the top that you can go for. So think of it as that. And not only is it the top of the top, it's free. And it's so empowering because you get out there and you're getting a lot of these health benefits from being outside, Shinrin Yoku, forest bathing, and getting a lot of these compounds that you would that help calm and ease your mind and get you into that parasympathetic, that really calming state of mind.
Exactly.
It's important that we apply these concepts because it's what's worked for us for millions of years. That's the idea. And it's shown that, around the advent of agriculture, the bone density of our skeletal structures decreased and our brain size has gone down, So that's just, case in point. I like to tell people that, we were happier and healthier back then. We didn't have the environmental part down. That's what we have now. But our quality of life, I would say, is a little skewed. It's interesting now.
I mean, even myself, I find myself going, oh, I said something I can't remember the last day I took just to disappear.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I like about fly fishing trips. I could fish for 8 hours and catch 2 fish and be completely in a whole new level.
Yeah, and that's something I'm like really excited to work on myself is fishing. That's something that this year I want to work on
you're
myself.
In a great place, and you got some great rivers right out there and lakes.
Well, that's good because I don't know, because I'm not really familiar with fishing. I've got a couple buddies that fish, but like I I fished when I was like super young with like my grandpa, you know what I mean? That kind of thing. So something I got to relearn, just another one of those skills that I got to relearn.
That's awesome.
And it's interesting. Yeah, I want to. Again, it's just food sovereignty.
Please, I mean, that's like going to church for me. It's like,
super meditative.
Like I said, I could catch one or two fish all in an 8-hour period and go, man, that was an awesome day.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And now a word from our sponsor. We'll be back in a minute.
We all know that eating healthy is a part of becoming a better person. But if you're finding the organic and non-toxic products too expensive or hard to find, then ThriveMarket.com, the healthy online shopping club, is your solution. Like the Costco meets Whole Foods for everything healthy online, you'll get the best organic and non-GMO brands up to 50% off retail prices, shipped nationally to your door for free within 2 to 3 days. When you become a member, ThriveMarket.com will donate a free membership to a low-income family, teacher, or veteran, so we can all thrive together. You never have to pay full price for healthy food again. Go to ThriveMarket.com/TheRebelHealthCoach to get your free jar of coconut oil and 15% off your first order. This offer is valued at $18 and available for our listeners only on this special link. So here it is again, ThriveMarket.com/TheRebelHealthCoach.
Yeah.
So, I appreciate you taking the time out today for me. I love your podcast. I love what you are doing. And I love that you're absorbing all this knowledge in a way to share it with the world through your podcast. Because a lot of us don't take the time to just smell the roses anymore.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. It's one of the things that, our society tells us, speed up. We need to hurry up and do this, hurry up and do that. When really that's the problem. We need to slow down.
Exactly.
Slow down, just like we were talking about earlier. It's not, how fast can I do this? How fast can I transition into doing all this? It's like, no, you know what? I'm just going to take my time and I'm going to learn how to do this at my own pace. But as long as you have the knowledge and you just stick with it and you're doing one small thing every day to make sure that you're living that congruent lifestyle, I think you're doing pretty good.
And I have a client, I was telling her the other day, even if you take some of these podcasts out there for meditation, and just take 20 minutes or 10 minutes and sit with just listening to that. Regardless if your mind wanders in a million different directions, just listen. And it's so good for your head. It's so good for your heart. It's good for it's just so good for you and healthy. But I'm as guilty as the next. So there's some days I don't even get a chance to do that.
Yeah, it's funny because there's a lot of things that I want to do. That's another one of the pitfalls. Is that we're overstimulated. We are so overstimulated these days, and that's why disconnecting and having these type of rituals, these self-care rituals for yourself, is so paramount, right? Taking care of ourselves and taking care of not only our body and our nutrition, but making sure that, right, you got the head game down. You're taking care of number one, because if you can't take care of yourself, you can't take care of other people. And that's kind of how I think of things.
Yeah, exactly. I saw a meme the other day. God knows where meme came from. I was born in 1959, so this meme thing is just a whole new level of social society to me. It's like, okay, social is I don't know. It's just crazy. But I saw this meme and it had Michael Douglas from one of the movies he was in. And it said something about, now that I'm older, I understand the movie more. It was one he went crazy and started shooting people up. I forgot the name of the movie. But, it's crazy. Some of the things that you wonder why people are going off on other people going down the road these days,
There's A lot of people out there too. I'm going to be honest. Like the only time that I feel like I ever get upset is when I'm on the road. So, it's crazy. It's just that's another reason why I just want more space. For myself.
How do you get that where you're at? How do you get that space?
Well, so that's one of the pieces that I'm trying to figure out right now is, so I have this grand vision, I have this huge vision for myself and for the family that I want and everything. And I wouldn't mind having some acreage. And that's kind of what I'm looking at. I'm keeping my eye out on, land watch. And what my partner and my girlfriend and I want to do is just build a tiny house. We have one in mind, and it would cost around $33,000, about the same price as a sedan.
Right.
And I would own it, and I would put it on a piece of land, and from there we would eventually just build our own little tiny cabin or whatever.
Right.
While we were living in this, in this tiny house. And then eventually we would, maybe rent the tiny house out to Airbnb, whatever, do something like that. And again, we just want to raise a little family. And my partner she's a teacher for emotionally disturbed children. She's a special ed teacher.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, she's a super amazing person. And I want her to start she wants to start a kindergarten, a forest kindergarten here, and she wants to somehow learn how to incorporate those ideas into like an actual school so we can have children over there and do that kind of thing, like a rewilding type school. Yeah. And I want to do my podcast. So that's the thing. I just want to, when we first met, my girlfriend and I first met, I just told her I just wanted to travel and just learn. I just want to learn and travel. That's pretty much all I want to do. So, and this is, again, knowing that this topic that I talk about, ancestral health, is just so encompassing. It covers so many topics that it's something that I'll be forever learning. It's just something that, I kind of find solace in that. It's nice to know that, it doesn't have to be all done at once. I don't have to be perfect at any one thing, as long as I'm just making sure that I am following this path, because it's what's worked, again, sustainably for humans for millions of years. So,
yeah, exactly. And not only that, but we're less healthy than we were.
Yeah, whole picture. Yeah. I mean, so that's what they call evolutionary mismatch diseases. And that's because
that's a good term.
And that's the scientific term. And it's because, things like diabetes, I think they have a term for it. It's metabolic syndrome.
Exactly.
And so it's crazy. They basically said now that if you live past 40, you have a chance of like dying from 4 things now, It's like heart disease, mental illness, what is it, diabetes, there's
cancer.
In cancer, there we go. That's what it is. So it's insane to think about that, So I'm going to do everything in my power, especially knowing what my family history is, to make sure that, because it started off with just trying to optimize my health. And then also realizing that the optimal way to optimize my health is to do everything that would be optimized for a human. So as I look at it that way, it just goes back to history, and it goes back to evolution, and trying to bridge a divide between, I'm not trying to like totally eschew or remove modern day completely. I just understand that there needs to be like a transition where we can still have some of the luxury and the technology that we have today, but we ground ourselves with the ancestral wisdom and teachings of our hunter-gatherers, our forebears, the ones who were getting a lot of the things right, and are now, all this woo-woo stuff is now being validated by science, and it's no big surprise.
Amen. Man, you nailed that. And that's one of the reasons I got into this whole thing of making myself healthy. Is my father passed away of diabetic complications or metabolic syndrome, and your kidneys go, your heart, it's a whole big snowball effect. And, I got to that position, and I was like, I can't keep following this rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Which is another rabbit hole in my life, is that rabbit hole. And I'm finding more and more that most of us in this health industry and you following the paleo and discovering this. We all have our story of how we got there.
Mm-hmm.
And but you're doing an awesome job with your podcast, and you're doing an awesome job getting the word out there. And as from somebody who's studying functional medicine and into the health industry, the health coaching side of this, it's great to see people like you getting the word out there to people who don't understand it and want to know it. And I appreciate that.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, as long as there's somebody who will listen, my podcast will still be going. So
that's awesome.
It's not going anywhere. Yeah. Thank you. And I super appreciate that. It's funny because a lot of people don't understand that it's not something that I just whipped together. It's something that I've been thinking about and pondering and was really just too afraid to do for the past 4 years. I've had an opportunity to do this, and it just now, I've had some people in my life just be like, have you launched it yet? Have you launched it yet? Are you launched? Because I was becoming that person who was like, oh, I plan on doing this. And then, it just never came into fruition. And now that it's starting to pick up some momentum with this project, Ancestral Health Radio, I mean, I'm really, really grateful. I'm just really excited because it's just an opportunity, like you said, to kind of get the word out, because not everybody's willing to put in the work, that it takes to be a podcaster or a blogger or somebody on social media, right? But because it's a lot of work. I don't think people understand, it's like quite a bit of work, and it takes money too, guys.
Exactly. This isn't cheap. I was in that same area, and I kept going, okay, I got to launch. And I was such a perfectionist that I would never get there.
Yep.
So just prepping for this episode, I mean, I must have put 2 or 3 hours just looking into ancestral health and the whole rewilding thing. So it does take time and money, and I appreciate that. Where can our listeners go to find you?
They can find me on social media. It's James Broderick, or they can like the official Ancestral Health Radio Facebook page if they want to do that. That's facebook.com/Ancestral Health Radio. Or they can always go to the website, which is ancestralhealthradio.com. They can check out previous episodes, see if they like it for themselves. And if they have any questions, they can always reach out to me at james@ancestralhealthradio.com. I'm always free to answer any questions if anybody has any questions or wants to hear anything from me in particular, So I'm always a pretty accessible guy. So,
oh man, that's awesome. One more question, and I forgot about this. If you had 3 hours to kill, what album would you listen to?
Ooh, 3 hours to kill, and what album would I listen to? Only one album, huh?
One album.
Oh man. Okay. Jeez. That's hard coming, you know what? Because I played in a few bands back in the past, so it's hard for a bando like me to really think of a single artist. You know what? So I would probably play any one of the albums from a band called Animals as Leaders.
Animals as Leaders.
Yep. I mean, already from the name, right? You can tell it's
exactly
my style, but it's like a very progressive, jazzy metal band, but it's all instrumental. So there's no crazy screaming vocals or anything like that. It's just kind of really groovy, technical, instrumental work. It's just really, really good stuff.
And that band was
Animals as Leaders.
Animals as Leaders. All right. Hey, thanks, buddy. Thanks for the time.
Hey, no problem, man. Thanks for having me on.
Have a great day. And, you too. And I enjoyed it immensely.
Yeah, for sure, dude. Let me know if you want to do it again sometime.
Okay.
We'll dive into a more specific topic or anything if you want.
That's awesome, man. I mean, we could go mushrooms for hours.
Yeah. Mushrooms is something that I've been really recently getting into. If you're looking to get into mushrooms, just know that you need to know your trees.
Exactly.
That's probably the most important part right there that I tell everybody.
And know your trees. Thank you for taking the time today, buddy.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for having me, man.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Rebel Health Coach podcast. Please go to my website, www.tomunderwood.net. That's THOM underwood.net, and grab yourself a copy of my free ebook, 11 Surprisingly Easy Changes to Be Your Best Self. It's under the freebies tab at the top of the page. This will also sign you up for my monthly newsletter, and I promise not to blast you with endless BS emails. Also, if you'd like to book a 1-hour consultation with me, at the bottom of the homepage, just click on the button, schedule a free 1-hour consultation. And if you really enjoyed this show, please go to iTunes and rate the show and leave me a comment. Have a blessed day.